Well, hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to properly dry your flowers. Right now in the autumn, we have some beautiful flowers still blooming in our garden, but come winter, those blooms will be gone and everything else will be store-bought. So I wanted to give you a way to better preserve what you have available to you now, especially because in January, we'll be making these beautiful floral wreaths to hang up after your holiday decor has gone away. And I'd love for you to have an even larger plethora of flowers to choose from. Now, there are a couple different reasons why people dry their flowers. One is sentimentality. I grew up drying a lot of roses that came from performances or I got for a dance. And I loved having a rose or two from each of those bouquets to be like, oh, these represent different memories. And it's sometimes nice that you can do that for yourself or help somebody who's maybe younger that wants to save some of those special bouquets and remember them a little bit longer. So that's one reason a lot of people do it. It's also really fun to design with beautiful flowers, just even in a crafting sense. There are quite a few of them that don't hold up very well once you dry them. So I want to give you as many tips and tricks as I can when you're going to pick out which ones to dry. And my first tip for you is to look for small leaves. So when you look at this oregano, this beautiful oregano, you'll see that there are a lot of really small leaves that make up each little floret. And I know when I look at this that each one's gonna have a lot of color value and size value because overall it's a very large bunch of oregano. But let's say you wanna pick some flowers to dry. Well, another equivalent to small leaves is small petals. Look for something like a hydrangea. Now, just because it has small petals doesn't mean that it'll dry well. You wanna make sure there are a lot of them because they shrink down and lose volume. So here's a hydrangea with lots of little tiny flowers that make these little florets, and it together has enough volume to really make an impact. Peonies are beautiful. You can imagine how big these used to be. It's a great example of how they shrink down to size. These are beautiful peonies, but they maintain their color so well. Another great way to know if the flower is going to hold up well when you dry it is to actually feel it. What does it feel like when it's alive and fresh? Like straw flowers and status, they're a little crunchy to the feel when you're actually looking at these in a market or arranging with them. And that way you know that they already kind of live on a more dehydrated level. Once you dehydrate them, they're not going to lose any of their shape, any of their color. They hold up so remarkably well. I highly recommend straw flower if you have access to any. And if not, status is another really good go-to. When you're actually feeling that status, when it's live and fresh, it feels a little crunchy. It does a great job of holding up. Nigella pods, similar to poppy pods or any other pod, once the flowers drop all those petals, there's a pod that remains. These dry so well. You don't have to worry about those petals shriveling up because it doesn't have any. They are just beautiful and textural, and they can add a real beautiful quality to our arrangement. And same with berries. Berries can add a really beautiful quality. Not all berries dry very well, so it's always nice to give it a test run and see. And it's true for any flower, honestly. If you don't know how it's going to hold up, just try it and find out, and then take note for next time whether or not you should do that one again. I know all of this from trial and error, so the first thing to do is just start trying stuff. So today I'm going to show you how to properly dry a garden rose. Here's a little beautiful one from my garden. And we're going to dry some fresh oregano. This is a floral oregano. It's not one I want to eat later. But if you ever want to dry your own herbs, the same principles will apply. And from my autumn box, I'm going to use this beautiful flower twine. Flower twine is compostable, so I can throw the whole thing away at the end if perhaps my drying didn't work out, or if I just cut it off with the stems, I can throw it all away at once. Now, if I were to dry this in an upright vase, the head of this flower would start to droop. It's not strong enough in its stem once it starts to lose hydration to continue to hold up this beautiful head of petals. And so it will fold over in half, and you will have a flower with a stem and a big 180 crook of the head hanging down. You've probably seen this before in your own vases as they just dried up. If you were to dry it straight on your tabletop, surely the stem won't droop, but the weight of the petals will instead squish up flat and give you a very pancake looking rose. it won't maintain its shape. So we really want to preserve this shape. The best way to do that is to instead hang it upside down. So we are going to hang our flowers upside down. I'm going to take my flower twine and I'm going to tie a knot just below the head of the rose. If I go too far down the stem, the weight of the flower head would cause the rest of the stem to just slip out. Be careful when you tie that knot. If your stems are too delicate, they could snap. So don't pull too tight, just tight enough to not let it slip out. Okay? Now I'm gonna give myself a little extra room and then I'm gonna cut it. Now this one's ready to hang. Now I'm gonna do the same thing with my oregano. I'm gonna come up close underneath the head of the oregano and tie it together. The closer I can get to the heavy part of the flower, in this case the florets here, the better it will hang. Great. Now this one's ready to hang as well. Now let's talk about where to hang these. Our first instinct is to hang them right against a wall. And yeah, you can. That's not out of the question. However, when they are leaning against the wall, it will get very flat backed. So if that's not a problem to you, then you may do that on the wall. But you want to hang it on a wall that you don't mind getting a little staining on, because as these dehydrate, especially the more saturated the color of the petal is, it might leave some staining on your wall. So I recommend doing it in a garage or someplace where you don't necessarily mind a little discoloration on your paint. The best place to really hang something like this is from a shelf. If you have some sort of cupboard that is projecting from the wall and it has the bottom of it here and maybe some space before the counter, hang it on the side of the cabinet away from the wall where the florets and head hang below the bottom of that shelf. That way it won't be pressed up against any sort of wall. True for your rose as well. Now, because you have to get a little creative on where to hang these, I've provided you with command hooks, so we can add one of these anywhere in the house. These won't pull any paint off of any of your walls or your cabinets, and they're small enough and discreet enough that it shouldn't make a big impact into your home decor. So in order to properly apply this, if you've never done a command hook, you simply peel off one side, the wall that it says, this side to the wall, and then we pull off the other sticker. Take your command hook, make sure it's not upside down, and stick it right on. Now we're gonna just make a little loop in the top of our flower twine. Make sure you've left enough slack on your twine so that you can size just how far up or down you want to hang it. Again, if you're hanging it on a cabinet or a shelf, you might want to dictate just where that loop is once the command hook is on. And you're just going to tie a loop as you would any other loop, one that will be strong enough to hold it. I'm going to cut the excess. And there it is. I can even hang my other one right up on here as well. Now I might want to size this loop so it hangs a little higher, or I might even size it so that it hangs a little lower and doesn't compete with the space in that oregano. Now pre-prepared, it might leave a little bit of a mess as it's hanging there. It might leave a little bit of leaf or dirt underneath it. You might be inclined to hang it outside, perhaps on a deck, but know that when you put it in the sunshine, the sun will sun bleach this. It'll turn it to be that autumn leaf brown that we know so well when we're crunching through those leaves. So you'll want to make sure it absolutely is away from the sunshine and out of all the elements. You don't want to see any rain on it or snow, anything too windy. You want to keep it in a safe, clean, dry place. So there you go, the best ways to dry your flowers while maintaining that shape and that color. Just a couple extra steps and you will notice a great difference when you dry those things. I'm excited to see what you've picked, and I'm excited for you to go out into your own gardens and see what beautiful product you might want to preserve through the winter. All right, now you've learned something new, now go make something beautiful.